Year 10 and 11, because I know Year 10s are watching this as well. We're going to look at the evaluate question, which is question 4. Now, this question is worth 20 marks, so I would say that you need to spend a good amount of your time on here, and I would say around 20 minutes. We're going to look into it, have a few ideas, and I'm also going to write a model answer at the end. Okay? Hope you enjoy. Now, first of all, what do we mean to evaluate? Because that's a key part of this question, but often students don't really know what that means. Well, to evaluate literally means to judge or calculate the quality, importance, amount, or value of something. So you're going to be making a judgment of how well the writer has presented what the statement is saying. And you need to make that clear throughout your writing. Now, the question 4 we're going to look at is a question 4 I did on the Saturday, just today's Saturday actually, and it is from an Ian Fleming novel. It's a really good extract, and the bit that I'm going to use will be in a later slide. So it says, focus this part of your answer on the second part of the source from line 23 to the end. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to really underline where it says from line 23 to the end. Now, whatever line it tells you to do, whatever section, please make sure you're in keep with that. If you go out of that, you're not going to lose marks, but you're not going to gain any. So you're pretty much, in essence, losing marks. It will say, a reader said, this part of the story shows how frightened the narrator is of the terrible weather. It really emphasises how violent the storm is. To what extent do you agree? In your response, you could, I often just take away the could, and I write down, I'm going to write very badly here, must. Why? Because you really need to realise that you kind of must use all of it. You must consider your impressions of the weather, give that a tick. You must evaluate how the writer shows. So this is where your evaluation goes, and you must support your response with references to the text. You need to have that. And as I've said, it's 20 marks, the highest weighted question on part A of the language question, and you'd be spending around 20 plus minutes on there. Thing I want you to do is simply have a look at the section of the extract. This is not the full text, but this is from line 23 to the end. If I was you, I'd pause the video now and just have a quick read and peruse of it. Please enjoy. So first of all, usually, I'm not going to say always, because there have been times when they've only used one kind of phrase, but usually the question is split with 2 mini statements within the statement. Here it is how frightened the narrator is of the terrible conditions, and also how violent the storm is. So in your planning, you need to find quotations that show the narrator is frightened and also show the violence of the storm. I go for about 2 to 3 quotations from each section. Minimum of 2, probably maximum of 3, okay? If you want to go into 4, that's fine, but as always, please keep your quotations as short and juicy as possible. I will tell you that with the quotations I've chosen later on, a few of them are a little bit longer than usual, but they are really juicy quotations that I can say a lot out of. So that's why I've picked them. If you want to, you can pause here for a second, and then I will show you the quotations that I've picked. Enjoy. Right, so my quotations are here. First one is, I didn't move, I couldn't. Lovely 2 short sentences to show that fear and anxiety. My other one is slightly longer, and I did mention that earlier, and it says, how could I have been so foolish, so impudent? That lovely question to show how frightened the narrator is. I've also got, it was a catastrophe, the end of the world. A lovely bit of hyperbole and an exclamatory sentence. So notice that the quotes I've used and the quotes I've chosen all have things that I'm already kind of bringing out, and I'm going to go through one quote quite deeply at one point. Okay, I've chosen quotations that I can easily use to show my agreement with the critical statement, but also quotes that I can say a lot out of, because I still need to analyse how the writer has done this, as well as evaluating how well they have used it. For the violent storm, I put the thunder that had been creeping up quietly behind my back. Lovely bit of personification there. And I think the word creeping as well, this idea of the thunder being almost like an adversary, almost like a villain going against her, is really wonderful. I've got sprang its ambush. Again, notice the personification of the storm there. And sprang its ambush. An ambush is an attack. A lot of us were discussing this earlier. Sprang gives this idea of an element of surprise, and the verbs in there as well. Sprang its ambush is so incredibly strong and meaty. Colossal explosion. I love this idea of a colossal explosion because, again, we have a slight hyperbole there, but explosion tells us of the noise of this of the storm, conveying again its strength. I think the idea of it being colossal, not just large. Yes, we are going into hyperbole, but you can talk about the fact that it's being described as colossal, the explosion. So that beautiful adjective there really heightens the noun of explosion there too. Great. We're going to look at one of the quotations, and really I'm going to go through it quite deeply with you, okay? So I'm going to deep dive into the quotation, how could I have been so foolish, so impudent? Impudent kind of meaning like rudely arrogant, just in case you're unsure of that. So I'm just going to go through it. So I've said the use of a question, particularly as it's first person, really emphasizes the despair of the narrator. How could I have been so foolish, so impudent? This is further exasperated, or you could say heightened or emphasized. I've just used exasperated by the use of so as an adverb. And I've said this unusual construction intensifies the narrator's dismay as the very grammar of her speech starts to break down. Also, notice the use of repetition, so creating an almost stutter-like sound, helping to illustrate her nervousness. The words foolish and impudent are not synonyms. They're not the same things. They mean something entirely different. Impudence implies, disrespect or rudeness, suggesting that the narrator has trespassed against something or someone, and this man may be in danger. You're going to use the context box at the beginning to support this. Foolish, conversely, might evoke an air of sympathy for the narrator as she recognizes and regrets her action. So it's interesting that they use both of those, because actually it's also, you could say, suggesting that her mindset is not just fear. There's much more of a complexity there. There's like fear, there's anger towards herself, there's something quite irrational in that moment, and you can get layers of ideas in there. Now, as you can see, I've gone quite deeply into it, and you will need to do that because you still need to stretch out that analysis, and that will make sure that you're getting into those top marks. Write it up. So I always start with, I would agree with the critical statement. However, I'd go as far as to say, and I kind of extend it. So I'd go as far to say the narrator's not just frightened, she's absolutely terrified and beside herself, whatever it is. I then get my quotation here. And I get the word convincing. Why do I get the word convincing? Because remember, the whole point is to evaluate. So I start just gently dropping in my evaluation as I'm analysing as well. I'm kind of doing two things. I still do my levels of analysis, and then I've even got here other evaluative phrases. So if you don't find it convincing, you might say it's creative or engaging or effective or skillful. Any of these words can be used throughout to build this idea that you're not just analysing it, you're also evaluating how well the writer has shown the narrator is being terrified and so forth. Going to leave you with a model answer. So I'm just going to show you how I've used my sentence starters to write up an answer. And if you want to look at this, if you want to screenshot this, whatever you want to do, it might help you with your own revision. I agree to an extent with the critical statement. However, I would go as far to say that the narrator is not merely frightened, but rather she is terrified and in a constant state of anxiety. So see what I've said as I did. I agree to an extent. However, and I add on. Okay, I add on. Then I say the use of the question, how could I be so foolish, so impudent? Now, I've been saying this a lot recently. I'm just going to highlight this a little bit. I've been saying this a lot recently, that I do not want you to say in the quotation. Instead, you just need to embed that quotation like I've done here. And I've said this quotation is slightly on the longer side, but it's such a good quotation, it works being on the longer side. It's absolutely fine. Furthermore, I've said one thing, but now we go into that level of analysis. We're going to deeper. This is exasperated by the use of so as an adverb. This unusual intensifies the narrator's dismay as the very grammar of her speech starts to break down. Additionally, by employing repetition, creating an almost stutter-like sound, helping to illustrate her nervousness. It is also, so notice, it is also interesting to note, and I still go into this. So whatever I'm doing, yes, I'm evaluating, but I'm also analysing, and you need to do both. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best. Please let me know if you need any other things or any other tips for videos. I'll be doing a question 5 very soon.